You know, whenever a big company gets hit with a major scandal, you always have to wonder, wait, how did nobody see that coming? Well, today, we're going to pull back the curtain on that exact question. In a huge organization, who is actually supposed to stop things from going wrong? Let's get into it.
So let's make this personal for a second. Think about where you work. If I asked you right now to point to the person in charge of managing risk, who pops into your head? The chief risk officer? Maybe the compliance department? Well, what if I told you the real answer is everyone?
And that brings us to this huge idea, enterprise risk management, or ERM. You got to think of it as a total change in philosophy. Instead of treating risk like a fire that one specialized department has to put out, ERM says that everyone is on the fire prevention team. It's got to be woven right into the DNA of the company, from the top floor all the way to the front desk.
Okay, so if everyone is responsible, how does that actually work? I mean, what does that look like day to day? Well, in a perfect world, there's this really elegant blueprint for it. It's kind of like the architectural plans for a fortress, designed to defend against risk. It's called the 3 lines of defense model. Now, the first line, and honestly, this is the most important one, is every single employee. Why? Because they're the ones on the ground, doing the actual work. They're the closest to any potential problem. Then you've got your second line, your classic risk and compliance teams. Their job isn't to own the risk, but to keep an eye on things, offer guidance, and challenge that first line. And finally, the third line is your audit department, making sure the whole system is actually working the way it's supposed to.
It's a beautiful system in theory, right? But here's the thing, and you knew there was a but coming. What looks good on paper often just falls apart in the real world. This is where you start to see the cracks in that fortress wall.
And this slide just lays it out perfectly. The gap between the ideal and the real. In that perfect world, every employee feels like they own a piece of it. But what actually happens most of the time? Risk management becomes that department's job. The folks on the front lines, they have no clue they're supposed to be the main line of defense. This quote from our source material really just hits the nail on the head. Imagine you walk into a local branch of a big company and ask someone about risk management. What are they going to say? Oh, that's handled by someone at corporate. That one simple answer tells you everything you need to know. There is a huge disconnect.
So here's the bottom line. When your first line of defense doesn't even know it is the first line of defense, the whole system just becomes incredibly unstable. It's like trying to build a skyscraper on a foundation of sand.
And a sandy foundation has very real consequences. This isn't just some abstract philosophical problem. This is a problem that hits the wallet hard. Let's dig into why a weak risk culture is just so dangerous.
See, when employees don't think risk is part of their job, it's like leaving the front door of your house wide open for something called operational risk. And that's basically the risk of things just going wrong in the day-to-day operations.
So, what is operational risk, really? Well, it boils down to the failure of people, processes, and systems. People failures, that's an employee, maybe tired, typing a wrong number into a critical report. Process failures, think of a broken workflow that lets a bad decision slip through the cracks. And system failures, that's your server crashing right in the middle of a huge transaction. A weak risk culture makes all of these more likely, and the end result is always the same, financial loss.
And this is where it gets really serious. Regulators are all over this stuff. When they see a company with high operational risk, they basically force them to keep more cash on hand just in case. So a soft cultural problem turns into a very hard financial one, tying up millions that could have been used to grow the business.
Okay, so we've seen the problem, and we've seen the stakes are incredibly high. But the good news is, this is a fixable problem. The solution is all about fundamentally changing how people think about their jobs.
And that really is the million-dollar question, isn't it? How do you get an entire workforce, thousands of people, to make risk awareness just second nature?
Well, the key idea here is something called double hatting. It's this simple but powerful idea that every employee is actually wearing 2 hats. One hat is for their normal day-to-day job, but the other hat, that's their risk manager hat.
Putting on that second hat is all about constantly questioning your own work. It's about developing an instinct to ask, what if? What if this goes wrong? What if this number is incorrect? What's the worst case scenario here, and what would we do? It's all about getting ahead of problems instead of just reacting to them.
So how do you actually build this? Well, our source lays out a pretty clear 3-step plan. First, you have to train everybody on the basics of risk. It needs to be a shared language. Second, you've got to build systems that actually encourage that what-if thinking.
And third, you have to connect it to what people care about, incentives and pay. You have to reward people for managing risk well.
Now, it's really easy to look at things like training and incentives and just dismiss them as a cost. But that is completely the wrong way to see it. This is a long-term investment. A strong risk culture doesn't just protect the value of the company, it actively makes it stronger.
I want to leave you with this really powerful metaphor from our source material. Building a strong risk culture, it's like making sure the very last screw of an engine is tight. You can have all the big, fancy, powerful parts working perfectly, but if that one tiny critical piece is loose, the whole thing can just come crashing down.
And that brings it all back to you. Take a hard look at your own organization, your own team, maybe even your own work. Is every single screw tight? Thanks for joining us.